I remember the silence when the light went out. Not physical silence. The ship's reactors still hummed, the crew still breathed, the void still pressed against our hull. But a deeper silence, like the universe holding its breath before screaming. My name is Navigator Alexia Nostromo, third-generation gene-bred psychic servant of Battlefleet Obscurus, and I was staring into the warp when the Astronomican failed. That golden light, the Emperor's beacon that had guided humanity for 10,000 years, simply vanished. One moment, the Imperium was illuminated, navigable, mapped. The next, we were blind in an ocean of madness with 60 billion souls depending on us to find shore. You think you understand what that means, but you don't. The darkness that came after wasn't empty. It was hungry. This is what happened when humanity's lighthouse died, and why we pray it never happens again. Chapter 1. The Last Light. The Navigator's spire aboard the Eternal Vigil was my home, my prison, and my sanctuary, all at once. 300 meters of reinforced adamantium extending from the battlecruiser's dorsal spine, topped with an observation dome that let me see into the warp itself. Most crew never came here. Fear of my kind ran deep, even after 10 millennia of service. We were mutants, barely tolerated, our third eye marking us as simultaneously blessed and cursed. I didn't mind the isolation. The warp was company enough. At 0847 Imperial Standard Time, I was conducting routine navigation checks. We were 3 weeks into a 6-week journey from Cadia to Terra, carrying critical intelligence about increased chaos activity in the Eye of Terror. Standard route, standard precautions, standard procedure. Everything about the mission was unremarkable, except its cargo. Data that the High Lords needed to review personally. Captain Helios had the con, managing our real space systems while I handled warp sight. A good captain, 30 years commanding void ships, who understood that navigators weren't demons to fear, but specialists to trust. We'd worked together for 7 years, and in that time had never failed a mission or lost a ship. That perfect record was about to end. I was studying the Astronomican when it happened. The golden light that emanated from Terra, from the God Emperor himself through the sacrifice of 10,000 psykers daily, stretched across the galaxy like a lighthouse beam. Navigators used it as reference, orientation, and safety. When you saw that light, you knew where Terra was, which meant you knew where you were. The light was steady at 084703. At 84704 it flickered. At 84705 it died. The transition was instant. One moment, the warp was illuminated, currents visible, eddies mapped, our position confirmed. The next, absolute darkness. Not the darkness of closed eyes or unlit rooms, but the active darkness of the warp itself, pressing in like a physical weight. I gasped, clutching my observation throne, my third eye, the warp sight that let me perceive the Imperium, burned with sudden pain. Without the Astronomican's light, the warp's true nature became visible. It wasn't empty space or even chaotic energy. It was alive, aware, malevolent, and it knew we were vulnerable. Navigator Nostromo, Captain Helios's voice crackled through the Vox. Status report. We're reading massive warp disturbances. I tried to respond, but my throat closed. Terror unlike anything I'd experienced. Primal, absolute fear that came from my hindbrain. From racial memory of when humanity huddled in caves and feared the dark. The warp had always been dangerous, but the Astronomican had provided structure, light, safety. Now that protection was gone. Navigator, respond! I forced words through paralysis. Captain, the Astronomican, it's gone. Silence on the Vox. Then quietly, say again. The Emperor's light, the beacon from Terra. It's not there anymore. We're blind, Captain, completely blind. My hands gripped the armrests hard enough that my knuckles whitened, and the warp is responding to the absence. I didn't need to elaborate. Helios was an experienced void captain. He understood what happened when the warp sensed weakness. The Imperium was a reflection of consciousness, emotion, and thought. Every living being created ripples in it. The Astronomican had been humanity's assertion of dominance, our declaration that the warp could be tamed and traversed. Its absence was admission of vulnerability, and predators always sensed vulnerability. "How bad?" Helios asked. I engaged my full warp sight, looking beyond our immediate location into the deeper currents of the Imperium. What I saw made my breath catch. Warp storms were forming, not gradually, explosively, like flowers of madness blooming across reality's undersurface. Each storm was a region where real space and warp space merged, where physics became negotiable and demons could manifest freely. I saw 7 new storms within my perception range, with more forming every moment. "Very bad, Captain. The warp is destabilizing without the Astronomican's influence. Storms are erupting everywhere. Some ships..." I focused on distant contacts, other vessels making the same journey we were. "Some ships are being pulled off course. I can see their warp shadows twisting, their trajectories collapsing. They're being dragged into the storms. Can we navigate without the beacon? Could we?" Navigator training included emergency protocols, methods for traveling short distances using stellar phenomena as reference. But those methods were stopgaps, meant for temporary Astronomican fluctuations, not total failure. And they required seeing stars, which meant reaching real space safely. Maybe, if we can make it back to real space before the local warp topology shifts too much. But Captain, we need to exit warp transit immediately, right now. Every second we remain here increases the danger exponentially. Preparing emergency translation. Give me a target vector. I studied the warp currents, looking for the safest path to real space. Normally, this was straightforward. Find a calm region, punch through the membrane between dimensions, emerge in real space at your desired location. But with the Astronomican gone, the warp was anything but calm. Every direction showed turbulence. Currents that had been stable for centuries were now churning, folding, collapsing into themselves. The warp's natural chaos, usually kept in check by humanity's collective will and the Emperor's light, was reasserting itself with violent enthusiasm. "Vector 37 Mark II, I said, choosing the least terrible option. "It's unstable but navigable. Initiating translation in 3, 2... Something moved in the warp. Not a current or storm. Something with intention. Something vast. I caught a glimpse. A shadow the size of a city, limbs that numbered in the dozens, eyes that burned with colors that had no names. A demon, drawn by the Astronomican's failure like a shark to blood in water, and it was looking directly at me. "Translation now!" I screamed. The eternal vigil lurched as her Geller field, the protective bubble that kept the warp from directly touching the ship, strained against sudden pressure. Reality groaned, metal shrieked, and somewhere in the ship's lower decks, I heard screaming as crew members with latent psychic sensitivity felt the demon's attention. The warp drive fired, tearing us back toward real space through sheer mechanical force. The transition was violent. Normally, you phase gently between dimensions to avoid structural stress. Emergency translation was like punching through a wall rather than opening a door. The ship rattled, alarms wailed, and my warp sight inverted painfully as we crossed the boundary. We emerged into real space with all the grace of a thrown brick. I collapsed in my observation throne, third eye weeping blood from the strain. Emergency translation was agonizing for navigators. Forcing perspective changes between dimensions too quickly caused physical damage. But alive and damaged was better than dead and intact. "Navigation report," Helios demanded. I checked our instruments, comparing real space positions with known star charts. We're approximately 7 light years off course. Emerged in the Hadron system, uninhabited, no Imperial presence. But we made it, Captain. We're alive. For now, all decks reporting damage. Geller field held, but barely. 7 crew dead from warp exposure. They were near a weakened section when we translated. His voice carried the weight of command, making terrible calculations. "We can't stay here. Need to make for the nearest Imperial world, get repairs, get information." "Captain, I don't know if we can. Without the Astronomican..." I trailed off, reality sinking in. We're trapped. Every ship in the galaxy is trapped. Even short warp jumps are suicide without navigation reference. We could make it to the next system, or we could emerge 1,000 light years away, or not emerge at all. Silence on the Vox. Then, there has to be a way. Humanity crossed the void before the Astronomican. We can do it again. He was right, technically. Before the Astronomican, during the Age of Strife, humanity had used slower methods. Generation ships, sublight travel, desperate short-range warp jumps. But that humanity had been fragmented, each world isolated. The Imperium existed because the Astronomican made rapid warp travel possible. Without it, we'd need astropathic contact, I said, thinking aloud. Communication with other ships, coordinate safe routes through known calm regions, build a network of relay points. It would take months instead of weeks to reach anywhere. And the casualty rate, I didn't finish. The casualty rate would be catastrophic. Then we start building that network. We're Imperial Navy. This is our duty. Plot a course to the nearest inhabited system using whatever methods you can. Shortest possible warp jump. We'll make multiple small jumps if necessary, checking real space between each one. I wanted to tell him it was impossible. Wanted to explain that the warp without the Astronomican wasn't just dangerous. It was fundamentally different. But I was a navigator, and he was my captain, and the Imperium needed us to try. Understood, Captain. Beginning calculations. But sir, if the Astronomican is truly gone... I paused, choosing words carefully. Every ship in warp transit just became lost. Every navigator is blind. Every crew is potentially trapped in the warp forever. We're talking about millions of ships, billions of people. The Imperium's supply lines, reinforcement routes, communication networks, all gone in an instant. I know. His voice was grim. Which is why we need to reach civilization and help organize a response. How long for navigation calculations? 6 hours, maybe 8. I need to map local warp currents without the beacon as reference. Identify stable channels, plot microjumps. It's like building a map while blindfolded. You have 4 hours. We're not sitting here longer than necessary. Helios cut the connection, leaving me alone in the Navigator's spire with an impossible task. I activated the observation dome's full capabilities, letting my third eye perceive the warp in all its terrible glory. Without the Astronomican's golden light, the Imperium was almost unrecognizable. Currents that had flowed steadily for millennia were now twisting into knots. Eddies that had been navigational hazards were becoming full storm systems, and everywhere, I sensed movement, demons, warp entities, things that existed in the Imperium and hungered for real space. The Astronomican hadn't just been a navigation beacon, it had been a weapon, a ward, a declaration that Terra and its Emperor held dominion over this space. Its absence was an invitation. They were coming. I began my calculations, knowing that even if I succeeded, even if we reached the next system safely, the galaxy would never be the same. The Imperium was vast, but it was also fragile. 1 million worlds connected by threads of warp travel that could be severed in an instant. Those threads had just been cut. Somewhere out there, Terra faced whatever catastrophe had killed the Astronomican. Somewhere out there, 10,000 ships were realizing they couldn't find home. Somewhere out there, 1 trillion people were about to learn what isolation truly meant. The age of Imperium was ending, the age of darkness was beginning, and I had 4 hours to find a way to keep one ship alive, long enough to witness what came next. My hands moved across calculation instruments, plotting courses through nightmare. The warp pressed against our Gala field, patient and hungry. It could afford to wait. Without the Emperor's light, time was on its side. Chapter 2. Blind in the Dark. The calculations took 5 hours instead of 4, and even then I wasn't confident. Navigating without the Astronomican was like sailing an ocean without stars, sun, or coastline. Nothing to reference, nothing to orient by, only the shifting chaos of the warp itself. I'd found what looked like a stable current heading toward the Griffon system, approximately 2 light years away. Under normal circumstances, that jump would take 6 days. Now, I estimated 3 weeks if everything went perfectly, and nothing was going to go perfectly. Captain Helios assembled the senior staff in the bridge strategium at hour 6. I attended via hololith projection. Leaving the Navigator's spire during a crisis was inadvisable, since warp conditions could change rapidly. The assembled officers looked shaken. Commander Voss, the executive officer, Tech Priest Dominius, who maintained our systems, Master-at-Arms Kragan responsible for ship security, Astropath Choir Leader Meridian, whose telepathic communications had also been affected by the Astronomican's failure. "Status," Helios commanded. Voss spoke first. "Hull integrity at 83% after emergency translation. We lost 3 plasma conduits, damaged the port landing bay, and burned out 2 void shield generators. Repairs possible, but will take weeks. Casualties: 7 dead from warp exposure, 23 injured, morale collapsing." Tech Priest Dominius added in his mechanical monotone, "Warp drive functional but strained. Geller field generators operating at 91% efficiency. Further emergency translations inadvisable. Probability of field collapse increases 12% per subsequent jump." "Astropath Meridian," Helios prompted. The old psyker's face was haggard. "The choir is damaged, Captain. When the Astronomican failed, every astropath in my command felt it simultaneously. 3 died instantly. Their minds couldn't process the loss. 5 more are catatonic. The remaining 7 are functional but traumatized. And Captain, we can't send messages." That got everyone's attention. "Explain," Helios said. "Astropathic communication relies on the Astronomican as a reference point. We project thoughts into the warp, and other astropaths receive them by triangulating from the beacon. Without it," Meridian spread his hands helplessly, "we can still sense other psykers nearby, perhaps within a system. But long-range communication? Impossible. We're not just navigationally blind, we're deaf and mute as well." The implications settled over the strategium like a funeral shroud. No communication meant no calling for help, no coordinating with other Imperial forces, no receiving orders. Every ship, every world, every military unit was isolated. "Navigator Nostromo," Helios turned to my projection. "Your assessment?" I pulled up the warp charts I'd created. "I found a possible route to Griffon's system. 2 light years, 3-week journey if we're lucky. But Captain, you need to understand what we're facing. The warp is fundamentally unstable now. The Astronomican wasn't just light, it was structure, order imposed on chaos. Without it, the Imperium is reverting to its natural state, madness." I highlighted regions on the tactical display. These areas were stable warp channels yesterday. Now they're storm zones. These were dangerous but navigable. Now they're death traps. And this, I indicated our planned route, looks stable right now, but that could change mid-journey. We could be halfway through our jump when the current we're riding simply collapses, dumping us in uncharted warp space. "What are our odds?" Voss asked. "Honestly, 60-40 we make it. Those are terrible odds for warp travel. Normally we operate at 99% safety. But they're the best odds we have. Stay here, and eventually the local warp conditions will deteriorate enough that something breaks through our Geller field. Keep jumping blindly, and we'll end up lost forever. At least Griffon is a known target." Master-at-Arms Kragan spoke up. "What about the crew? They're terrified. Rumors are spreading. Everything from demon invasion to the Emperor's death. I've had to stop 3 panic incidents already." Helios considered this. "We tell them the truth. The Astronomican has failed. We don't know why or for how long, but we're Imperial Navy, and our duty is to reach friendly port and await orders. Emphasize duty, routine, faith. Anyone spreading panic gets confined to quarters." "It won't be enough," I interjected. "Captain, the crew can sense something is wrong even without understanding why. The warp affects people subconsciously. That's why voidsmen are superstitious." With the Astronomican gone, those subconscious pressures are intensifying. People will have nightmares, hear whispers, see shadows. Psychic contamination is inevitable during extended warp travel without the beacon. Recommendations? Increase prayer rotations. Keep crew busy with drills and maintenance. Minimize time in areas close to the hull where warp proximity is greatest. And watch for corruption signs, erratic behavior, religious deviation, sudden violence. Kill anyone who shows demonic influence immediately. No trials, no hesitation. The brutality of my words made several officers flinch, but Helios nodded grimly. Execute those protocols. Meridian, your remaining astropaths will conduct hourly sweeps for warp corruption. Kragan, arm section leaders with bolt pistols, an authorization to use lethal force against compromised crew. Voss, establish quarantine zones near potential breach points. Orders issued, the meeting dissolved. But before Helios closed the connection, he addressed me privately. Navigator, I need your honest assessment, not optimistic projections, real chances. I appreciated his directness. If we're very lucky, we reach Griffon, find it intact, and learn the Astronomican was temporary failure that's already restored. If we're moderately lucky, we reach Griffon, it's damaged but functional, and we coordinate with other surviving ships to establish basic warp routes. If we're unlucky, Griffon is destroyed or unreachable, and we die slowly running out of supplies in real space. If we're very unlucky, something breaks through our Geller field during transit, and we die quickly. Those are all terrible options. Yes, Captain, they are. Because without the Astronomican, there are no good options anymore. The Imperium as we know it has ended. What comes next? I trailed off, unable to articulate the enormity of what had been lost. The Imperium of man spanned 1 million worlds, connected those worlds through warp-capable ships that could cross the galaxy in months rather than millennia. Maintained order through rapid military deployment. Rebellions couldn't spread when reinforcements arrived quickly. Preserved culture through trade, communication, shared faith in the God Emperor. All of that depended on the Astronomican. Now every world was an island. Every ship a castaway. Every battle fought without hope of reinforcement. The Imperium would fragment into isolated pockets, each fighting for survival without support. Xenos species would sense the weakness and attack. Chaos would surge from the Eye of Terror unchecked, and humanity would die slowly, alone, in the dark. Unless the Astronomican was restored, unless whatever had caused this failure could be reversed, unless Terra itself survived whatever catastrophe had extinguished the Emperor's light. We prepared for warp transit over the next 18 hours. Engineers reinforced the Geller field generators. The astropathic choir meditated and prayed, trying to strengthen their psychic defenses. Crew drilled for boarding actions. If demons breached the field, melee combat would be the only option. I mapped and remapped the warp currents, watching them shift and change with alarming speed. At hour 24, we were as ready as possible. Helios gave the order, and we entered the warp. The transition was smoother than emergency translation, but still wrong. Usually, entering the warp felt like diving into deep water, pressure and darkness, but navigable. This time, it felt like diving into a storm-tossed ocean at night. The warp currents immediately grabbed us, pulling in directions I hadn't anticipated. I corrected course, using our warp engines to fight the drift, but it was exhausting. Without the Astronomican as reference, I had to navigate by reading warp currents themselves, identifying patterns, predicting changes, choosing paths moment by moment. It was like sailing a ship through a hurricane while blindfolded, using only the sound of wind to judge direction. Hour 3 of transit, the first incident occurred. Deck 9, Section 12. A maintenance crew working near the hull. One of them, a young rating named Devros, suddenly attacked his companions with a wrench, killing 2 before being subdued. When questioned, he screamed about beautiful music and voices promising truth. His eyes had changed color from brown to purple. Master-at-Arms Kragan executed him with a bolt shell to the head before corruption could spread. The body was incinerated immediately. The surviving crew members were quarantined and examined for contamination. Hour 7, second incident. 3 crew members in the starboard dormitories claimed to see children running through the corridors. Children that weren't there. Laughing children with wrong number of limbs. Astropath scans detected minor warp contamination. The affected crew were isolated and sedated. Hour 12. Third incident. Multiple crew reported nightmares with identical content. Visions of terror burning, the Emperor's corpse rising from the Golden Throne, and something vast and terrible laughing at humanity's hubris. The nightmares were coming from outside, from the warp itself, seeping through despite the Geller field. I reported these incidents to Helios during hour 15. Captain, the warp is getting inside, not physically, the Geller field is holding, but psychically. Without the Astronomican's protective influence, the Imperium is more aggressive, more invasive. It's testing us, looking for weaknesses. Can we survive 3 weeks of this? I don't know. Maybe. If we're strong enough. If faith holds. If nobody breaks completely and becomes a doorway for demons. I paused. Captain, I recommend we prepare a contingency. If corruption spreads too far, if it becomes clear we're lost, scuttle the ship. Don't let us become a demon vessel that threatens others. Helios was silent for a long moment. Then, understood. Arming scuttle protocols. Command override required to activate. Code split between you, me, and Voss. If 2 of us agree the ship is lost, we end it. It was a grim calculus, but necessary. Better to die clean than live corrupted. The days blurred together. Hour 24 became day 2. Day 2 became day 5. The warp currents shifted constantly, forcing me to recalculate routes dozens of times. We lost momentum, had to backtrack, fought against streams that tried to pull us into storm zones. The crew's mental state deteriorated steadily. More nightmares, more whispers. Someone painted strange symbols in the mess hall before being caught and confined. A section of Deck 4 had to be sealed off when crew reported the bulkheads breathing. Astropath Meridian suffered a breakdown on day 8, screaming that he could hear millions of voices crying for the light that won't come. He recovered but aged 10 years overnight, his remaining hair going white, his eyes haunted. Through it all, I stayed in the Navigator's spire, barely sleeping, constantly watching the warp. My third eye ached from strain. I developed headaches that felt like nails driven into my skull. But I couldn't stop. Any lapse in attention could mean course deviation, and course deviation meant death. On day 15, halfway to Greyfon, we encountered another ship. Its warp signature appeared suddenly, another vessel struggling through the chaos. I identified it immediately, Pride of Cadia, a transport carrying refugees from the increasingly dangerous Cadian sector. We'd passed her on our outbound journey weeks ago. I contacted the bridge. Captain, there's another ship nearby. I can sense her warp shadow. She's in trouble. Specify. Her course is erratic. She's being pulled toward a warp storm. And her Geller field. I focused my warp sight, studying the other vessel's protective aura. It's failing, fluctuating. They must have taken damage during emergency translation. Can we help? I wanted to say yes. Wanted to be the hero who saved the other ship. But I was a navigator, and navigators dealt in truth. No, Captain. We're barely maintaining our own course. If we divert to assist, we'll be pulled into the same storm, and if her Geller field fails completely, I didn't need to finish. A Geller field failure meant the warp directly touched the ship, which meant instant demon manifestation and total crew loss. How long does she have? Minutes, maybe an hour. The storm is pulling her in and she doesn't have the power to break free. Can they translate back to real space? I checked their trajectory. Not safely. They're too deep in the current. Emergency translation would tear them apart. We watched through our instruments as the Pride of Cadia fought against the inevitable. Watched her engines flare desperately. Watched her course spiral closer to the storm. Watched her Geller field flicker, weaken, die. The warp storm swallowed her whole. For one moment, I sensed screaming, thousands of voices, crew and passengers realizing what was happening. Then the ship's warp signature twisted, corrupted, became something else. Something that wasn't a ship anymore, but a thing of flesh and metal fused together, animated by malevolence. Then it was gone, pulled into the storm's depths where reality had no meaning. Chapter 3. The Fleet of the Lost. The Navigator's Council convened aboard the Righteous Flame, a grand cruiser that served as the impromptu flagship for our survivor fleet. 15 ships, ranging from massive battle cruisers to smaller escorts, represented all that remained of what had been a busy commercial system. We'd learned that Griffon typically hosted over 200 vessels at any time. The math was brutal. 92% casualties. I arrived via shuttle, still weak but functional. The Medicae had cleared me for duty with warnings about not overtaxing my third eye, advice I'd immediately ignore once we entered warp space again. My fellow navigators assembled in a shielded chamber, each bearing the marks of recent trauma. Navigator Quintus of the Righteous Flame chaired the meeting. He was old, possibly fourth-generation gene-bred, with a third eye that had seen centuries of warp travel. His hands shook constantly. Neural damage from the Astronomican's failure, a common affliction among our kind. "My brothers and sisters," he began, voice wavering. "We are the survivors of a catastrophe unprecedented in Imperial history. The God Emperor's light has been extinguished, and we are blind in the darkness. Each of us has witnessed horrors in the warp, lost crew to corruption, barely escaped with our lives. And now we face a terrible question. What comes next?" Navigator Soraya of the Blade of Righteousness spoke up. She was young, maybe second generation, her third eye still vibrant. "We adapt. Humanity navigated the warp before the Astronomican, during the dark age of technology, during the age of strife. We can do it again." "At what cost?" Navigator Mordant of the Unbroken Will countered. He was heavily augmented, half his face replaced by augmetics. Those periods saw humanity nearly destroyed, worlds isolated for millennia, regression to barbarism. The Astronomican made the Imperium possible. Without it, we die slowly instead of quickly," I interjected. All eyes turned to me. "Navigator Soraya is right. We can navigate without the beacon. I did it for 3 weeks reaching here, but the casualty rate will be catastrophic. I estimate 70 to 80% of ships currently in warp space will be lost. Of those that reach real space, maybe half will successfully make subsequent jumps. The math is simple. Most of us die." Silence greeted my assessment. Finally, Quintus spoke. "Then we must establish new methods, share knowledge, create navigation networks using relay points and known safe routes. It will be slow, dangerous, but possible." "We don't have time," Navigator Soraya said urgently. "Every hour we delay, more worlds fall into isolation, more ships are lost. We need to act now. Establish a courier network, spread information about safe routes, coordinate surviving forces. If we work together, we can preserve some of the Imperium's infrastructure." Navigator Mordant laughed bitterly. "Preserve? The Imperium spans 1 million worlds connected by warp routes. Even if we could navigate safely, which we can't, it would take centuries to re-establish those connections using short-range jumps. The Imperium isn't damaged, it's dead. Not while we live," I said, surprising myself with the conviction. "Look, I'm not optimistic. I've seen what's out there. The warp is actively hostile now without the Astronomican's protection. But giving up ensures failure. At least if we try, we give humanity a chance." "A chance at what?" Mordant demanded. "Delaying the inevitable? The Chaos Gods are probably laughing at us right now. 10,000 years of the Emperor's beacon holding them back, and now it's gone. They'll surge out of the Eye of Terror, corrupt every world, destroy everything we've built. We can't stop that." "Maybe not," Quintus said quietly. "But we can bear witness. We can preserve what knowledge we have. We can guide whoever survives toward rebuilding. Even if the Imperium falls, humanity endures. That's our duty, not to the Imperium, but to the species itself." The philosophical debate was interrupted by proximity alarms. We all felt it, a disturbance in the warp, close to real space. Something was entering the system. I rushed to the observation deck with the other navigators, activating our warp sight. Through the Imperium's surface, I saw something massive approaching. Not a ship, multiple ships. A fleet. "Emperor preserve us," Soraya whispered. "That's at least 40 vessels." She was right. Through the warp's distortion, I counted 43 distinct warp signatures, all moving in coordinated formation. Impossible. Coordination required communication, and long-range astropathic messages were impossible without the Astronomican. Unless... They must be traveling together, I said. Maintaining visual contact in real space, making jumps simultaneously. It's the only way to stay coordinated. "Who are they?" Mordaunt asked. We watched as the fleet began translating into real space. One by one, ships emerged from the warp into Griffon's system, and as their identities became clear, relief and dread warred in my chest. Space Marine strike cruisers, 6 of them, massive vessels bearing the colors of multiple chapters. I identified Ultramarines, Blood Angels, and Dark Angels heraldry. Around them, smaller vessels, frigates, destroyers, support ships, all bearing Adeptus Astartes markings. "A Space Marine relief force," Quintus breathed. They must have been close to Griffon when the Astronomican failed, coordinated their translation. The lead cruiser, bearing ultramarine colors, broadcasted on all channels. "This is Brother Captain Caduceus of the Ultramarines 4th Company, aboard the Gauntlet of Macraga. We are responding to Griffon Wafor's distress signals. All Imperial vessels are ordered to coordinate with our fleet for system stabilization. The Emperor protects." The Emperor protects. Those words felt hollow now, with his light extinguished. But the Space Marines represented hope. If anyone could stabilize this disaster, it was the Adeptus Astartes. Captain Helios immediately opened channels with the Space Marine fleet. I returned to the Eternal Vigil in time to witness the conversation. Brother Captain Caduceus appeared on our hololith, a massive figure in ornate power armor, his face scarred from centuries of warfare. "Captain Helios, status of your vessel?" "Damaged but operational, Brother Captain. We arrived from the Cadian sector 3 days ago, barely survived the journey without the Astronomican. Currently coordinating with 14 other survivor vessels." "Cadian sector?" Caduceus's expression darkened. "What news from Cadia?" "We left before the Astronomican failed, but activity in the Eye of Terror was increasing. Multiple sightings of Chaos fleet movements, increased cultist activity on nearby worlds. The intelligence we carry for Terror was deemed critical by..." "Terror is besieged," Caduceus interrupted. "We received fragmentary astropathic messages before communications failed entirely. A massive warp storm has engulfed the entire Sol system. The Astronomican failed because something attacked the Imperial Palace directly. We don't know if Terror still stands." The words hit like physical blows. Terror besieged. The Sol system engulfed in warp storm. The heart of the Imperium under direct assault. If Terror fell, if the Emperor truly died. "What are your orders, Brother Captain?" Helios asked, his voice steady despite the catastrophic news. "We stabilize Griffon Wafor first. The demonic incursion must be contained. Then we establish this system as a rally point, bring in as many surviving ships as possible, organize a coordinated response. Eventually, we fight our way to Terra and determine what has occurred." Caduceus studied Helios. "Your intelligence from Cadia, it may explain what happened. The Eye of Terror and the Sol system are connected through the warp. An attack from one could affect the other." I activated my own hololith projection. "Brother Captain, I'm Navigator Nostromo. If Cadian intelligence is relevant, you need to understand what we observed. Chaos fleet movements weren't random. They were coordinated, massive in scale, like something was organizing them for a major offensive. A Black Crusade," Caduceus said grimly. "Abaddon the Despoiler has launched 13 failed Black Crusades from the Eye of Terror. If he's attempting a 14th, and if it's coordinated with an attack on Terra..." He paused. "This isn't random catastrophe. This is planned. The ruinous powers are making their move." The implications were staggering. A coordinated chaos assault on both Cadia, the fortress world guarding the Eye of Terror, and Terror simultaneously. Divide Imperial forces, create maximum disruption, use the confusion to pour demon armies through warp rifts into real space. How many worlds have fallen already? Helios asked. Unknown, but every world with weak warp defenses is vulnerable. Every ship in transit is at risk. Every Imperial institution depends on communication and travel that no longer function. Caduceus's tone was grim but determined. The Imperium faces extinction, but we are space marines. We do not accept extinction. We fight. Over the next 6 hours, the combined fleet organized an assault on Griffon the 4. The Space Marines would deploy via drop pod to the planet's surface, targeting major demonic concentrations. Naval vessels would provide orbital support, destroying warp rifts with concentrated bombardment. Surviving planetary defense forces would coordinate with Astartes' leadership. It was a good plan, as good as possible under impossible circumstances. But watching the preparations, I couldn't shake a terrible certainty. This was just the beginning. Griffona was one world among millions. The Space Marines numbered perhaps 2,000 warriors across all chapters in this fleet. Against galaxy-wide demonic incursion, they were a drop in an ocean. The assault began at dawn, Griffon time. Drop pods streaked through the atmosphere like meteors, delivering Space Marines directly into combat zones. Their superhuman abilities let them fight demons on relatively equal terms. Power armor protecting against warp corruption. Bolters firing blessed ammunition that could kill warp entities. Centuries of training and faith providing mental fortification. From orbit, I watched through auger feeds as the battle unfolded. In the capital city, a warp rift had spawned thousands of lesser demons, twisted things of impossible geometry and malevolent hunger. The Ultramarines hit them like a thunderbolt, bolter fire and chains words, reducing demons to warp essence that dissolved back into the immaterium. But for every demon destroyed, more emerged. The warp rifts weren't closing. Without the Astronomican's protective influence, they remained stable, constantly spawning new horrors. The Space Marines were winning individual battles, but losing the larger war. They can't sustain this, I told Captain Helios. Demons are infinite, Space Marines are not. Eventually, attrition wins. What's the alternative? He asked. Abandon 800 million people to demonic consumption? No, but we need to close the rifts, not just kill demons. And that requires... I trailed off, an idea forming. Terrible idea, desperate idea, idea that might actually work. Requires what, Navigator? Psykers, I said. Powerful ones, working in concert, channeling faith and will to seal the warp breaches. Like how the Emperor powered the Astronomican, using psychic might to impose order on chaos. We don't have the Emperor. No, but we have Astropath Meridian's choir, and we have me. And there are probably other psykers among the fleet crews and planetary survivors. If we gather them, coordinate their efforts. I met his eyes. It's never been done on this scale. It would be incredibly dangerous, probably kill most of the psykers involved. But it might seal the rifts. Helios considered this. Then he activated fleet-wide communications. All vessels, this is Captain Helios of the Eternal Vigil. We need every sanctioned psyker in the fleet, astropaths, sanctioned witches, any personnel with psychic rating above Epsilon. Report to your ship's command immediately. Within an hour, we'd identified 37 psykers across the fleet. Weak ones mostly, navigation assistants and communication specialists. But combined with Meridian's surviving choir and my own abilities, it might be enough. I explained the plan to Brother Captain Caduceus. We create a psychic field extending from orbit to the planet's surface. Use it to stabilize real space, making warp breach maintenance difficult. It won't close the rifts immediately, but it will weaken them enough that your forces can destroy the rift anchors, whatever physical objects or corrupted individuals are maintaining them. How long can you maintain this field? He asked. Minutes, maybe an hour if we're lucky. After that, the psykers will start dying from the strain, but it should give your forces a window to complete objectives. And you? What happens to you? I smiled without humor. I'm a navigator. We're designed to interact with the warp. I'll probably survive. Probably. Caduceus studied me with those ancient, knowing eyes. You understand this will set a precedent. If successful, every world-facing demonic incursion will expect similar intervention. You'll be condemning psykers across the Imperium to this fate, using them as living seals against the warp. I know, but what's the alternative? Let the demons win. Watch humanity burn because we were too afraid to use the weapons we have. I met his gaze. The Emperor sacrificed himself to protect humanity. 10,000 psykers die daily maintaining his throne. If we're not willing to make similar sacrifices, we've already lost. He nodded slowly. Then the Emperor protects through your sacrifice. Coordinate with my forces. When the psychic field activates, we'll move on the rift anchors simultaneously. The 37 psykers assembled in the Eternal Vigil's astropathic chamber, the largest shielded space in the fleet. They were terrified. Most had never attempted anything like this. Most would die. I addressed them honestly. What we're about to do has never been attempted. We're going to project our combined will into the warp, create a zone of stability around Griffon 4. It will be agonizing. It will probably kill most of you. But if we succeed, 800 million people live. Your sacrifice saves a world. One young astropath, barely out of training, raised his hand. What if we fail? Then we die achieving nothing, and the world falls anyway. But at least we tried. At least we fought. I activated my third eye, letting them see my conviction. I'm a navigator. I've stared into the warp for 3 weeks, without the Astronomican's light. I've seen horrors you can't imagine. And I'm still here, still fighting. If I can do it, so can you. Not inspiring rhetoric, but truth, which mattered more. We linked minds, 37 psykers and 1 navigator, our consciousness joining into something greater than the sum of parts. Through our combined warp sight, I perceived Griffon 4 and the warp breaches infesting it. Saw demons pouring through reality's wounds like blood from cut flesh. Now, I commanded. We pushed. Our combined will hit the warp like a hammer. I felt the psykers screaming, psychic and physical, their minds burning from the strain. But the effect was immediate. The warp rifts flickered, weakened, their stability compromised by our imposed order. On the planet below, demons shrieked as maintaining their physical forms became harder. Brother Captain Caduceus didn't waste the opportunity. Space Marine forces converged on the rift anchors. Corrupted temples, possessed individuals, chaos artifacts. Bolt of fire and blessed blades destroyed them methodically, cutting off the rift's connection to the Imperium. But maintaining the psychic field was agony beyond description. It felt like holding back an ocean with bare hands, every wave threatening to crush us. I felt psykers dying, their minds burning out like overloaded circuits, consumed by the forces they tried to control. 27 psykers remaining. 23. 18. Hold! I screamed through our psychic link. The Marines need more time. On the surface, the Ultramarines reached the largest rift, a massive tear in reality above the planetary capital. Its anchor was a corrupted cathedral, twisted by warp energy into something obscene. Caduceus led his warriors inside personally, fighting through demon hordes to reach the corrupted altar at the cathedral's heart. 15 psykers. 12. 9. My third eye was bleeding freely now, blood running down my face. The pain transcended physical. My soul itself was being abraded, worn down by contact with forces not meant for mortal consciousness. But I held. We all held. Because 800 million people depended on us. Caduceus reached the altar. Through our psychic connection, I felt him call upon his faith, centuries of devotion to the Emperor, absolute conviction in humanity's righteousness. He brought his power sword down on the corrupted altar, and blessed energy met warp corruption in an explosion of competing realities. The largest rift collapsed. The psychic pressure eased fractionally. 7 psykers remaining. but we could breathe. The Marines moved to secondary rifts, destroying their anchors with practiced efficiency. Each closure made the next easier, the warp's grip on real space weakening with every victory. After 43 minutes, the last rift sealed. The psychic field we'd maintained could finally release. I severed the connections carefully, trying to minimize trauma to the surviving psykers. 4 remained alive besides myself. 33 dead, their minds burned out by forces they'd channeled. 33 sacrifices that saved a world. I collapsed in the astropathic chamber, consciousness fading. My last thought before darkness claimed me was simple. We won. This time, we won. Chapter 4. The Price of Victory. I woke 4 days later in the Eternal Vigil's Medici Bay. Again. I was developing an unfortunate pattern of unconsciousness and medical recovery. The Medici staff was starting to recognize me, which suggested I needed to make better life choices. My third eye was bandaged completely this time. The Medici had sealed it shut to force healing. Without warp sight, I felt blind, despite my 2 normal eyes functioning perfectly. Being a navigator without the ability to see the warp was like being a shipwright who couldn't see wood grain, technically functional, but missing the essence of the craft. Captain Helios visited personally. He looked older, worn by stress and decisions that had no good answers. Navigator Nostromo, you've been unconscious for 96 hours. The Medici wasn't certain you'd wake. What's our status? I asked, focusing on duty instead of my own condition. Griffon 4 is secure. All major warp rifts sealed. Demonic forces eliminated or driven back into the Imperium. Casualties. He paused, and I saw the weight of command in his eyes. Planetary population reduced from 800 million to 640 million. 160 million dead in 3 days of fighting. Space Marine losses. 47 warriors killed, another 93 wounded. Naval casualties. 2 escort vessels lost, damage across the fleet. And psykers. He didn't need to finish. 33 dead, I said quietly. I know. I felt each one die. Your technique worked. Brother Captain Caduceus is implementing it across other endangered worlds. Gather psykers, create stabilization fields, allow military forces to destroy rift anchors. It's already saved 2 other systems in the last 4 days. Helios sat in the chair beside my bed. You've changed how humanity fights this war, created a weapon against the warp itself. At what cost? Every implementation kills dozens of psykers. We're burning through our most valuable assets, people who could navigate, communicate, detect threats, trading them for temporary victories. I tried to sit up and failed, body too weak. The Imperium doesn't have infinite psykers, Captain. Eventually we run out. Then what? Then we're no worse off than we are now. Navigator, I understand your concerns, but we're fighting for survival. Every world saved, every day bought, gives us time to find permanent solutions. He pulled out a data slate. You've been honored. The Adeptus Astartes themselves have commended your sacrifice. Brother Captain Caduceus specifically cited your courage and innovation. I laughed bitterly. Courage is easy when you're unconscious for most of the pain. What matters is what happens next. We saved 1 world. There are 1 million more facing similar threats, which is why the fleet is organizing a broader response. 15 Space Marine chapters have committed to coordinated action. 300 ships have rallied at Griffon, more arriving daily as word spreads. We're establishing this system as a staging ground, organizing task forces to relieve besieged worlds and destroy major warp incursions. 300 ships from the tens of thousands that should exist. A drop in the ocean, but more than I dared hope. What about Terra? Any word? Helios's expression darkened. Fragmentary. Brother Captain Caduceus has astropaths attempting long-range communication constantly. Most messages fail. The warp is too chaotic. But occasionally something gets through. Latest intelligence suggests Terra still stands, but the Sol system remains engulfed in warp storms. The Adeptus Custodes defend the Imperial Palace. The Emperor, He hesitated. The Emperor's status is unknown. Unknown. Such a small word for such catastrophic uncertainty. If the Emperor died, if the Golden Throne failed completely, humanity lost more than a beacon. We lost our psychic anchor, our defense against chaos, our very identity as a species unified under his rule. I need to return to duty, I said. My eye is damaged, but I can still navigate. The fleet needs every navigator possible. Actually, you're grounded. Medical orders. Your third eye needs 2 weeks minimum healing time before you can safely engage warpsight again. Use it early. You risk permanent damage or death. Helios smiled slightly. So you're stuck here, recovering, while the rest of us work. Doctor's orders, Navigator. I wanted to argue, wanted to insist I was essential, irreplaceable. But dozens of ships in the fleet had navigators, and I'd be useless if I permanently damaged my warp site through premature use. Sometimes the hardest duty was accepting limitations. What should I do for 2 weeks? I asked. Rest, recover, but also... He pulled up files on his data slate. We need documentation. Record everything you learned about warp navigation without the Astronomican. Every technique, every observation, every hard-won piece of knowledge. We're compiling a comprehensive guide for navigators across the Imperium. Your experience is invaluable. It made sense. Knowledge was worth preserving, especially when so much had been lost. I'll do it. But Captain, I want access to intelligence reports. What's happening across the Imperium? I need to understand the scope of this catastrophe. He considered, then nodded. Granted. But Navigator, be prepared. The reports are difficult. Difficult was an understatement. Catastrophic barely covered it. Over the next 2 weeks, as I documented navigation techniques and recovered, I absorbed every intelligence report reaching Griffon. The picture they painted was apocalyptic. Segmentum solar. The entire segmentum surrounding Terra was engulfed in warp storms. Sol system itself was completely cut off. No ships in, no ships out. Reports from neighboring systems suggested massive chaos fleet movements toward Terra. The throne world was under siege by forces that made previous Black Crusades look like raiding parties. Segmentum obscurus. Cadia had fallen. The fortress world that had guarded the Eye of Terror for 10,000 years was overrun by chaos forces led by Abaddon, the Despoiler. The fall created a massive warp rift called the Crimson Path that extended from the Eye of Terror toward the galactic core. Reports called it the Cicatrix Maledictum, the Great Rift. Thousands of worlds in its path were consumed by warp storms. Segmentum Tempestus, relatively stable compared to other regions, but still experiencing massive disruption. Naval fleets were scattered, unable to coordinate without communication. Orc wars were launching from multiple systems, sensing Imperial weakness. Tau forces were expanding aggressively into formerly Imperial space. Segmentum Pacificus, where we currently operated. Griffon represented a success story, but dozens of other worlds had fallen to demonic incursion. The Ecclesiarchy reported that faith was collapsing on some worlds, populations believing the Emperor had abandoned them. On others, faith had intensified to fanatical extremes, with populations demanding mass sacrifices to restore the light. Segmentum. Ultima. Worst affected besides Solar. The Astronomican's light had guided ships across the galaxy's eastern expanses. Its absence left hundreds of vital Forge worlds and Hive worlds isolated. The Tyrannid Hive fleets, sensing disruption, were accelerating their consumption of Imperial worlds. Estimates suggested 50 worlds lost to Tyrannids in the first month alone. The casualty numbers were beyond comprehension. Best estimates, and these were rough given communication breakdowns, suggested 10 billion dead in the first week, 50 billion in the first month. The rate was accelerating as worlds fell to invasion, starvation, or simple collapse of Imperial infrastructure. Ships were the most devastating loss. Of the approximately 50,000 warp-capable vessels in the Imperial Navy, merchant fleet, and various civilian operations, perhaps 10% had survived. 5,000 ships from 50,000. The rest were lost to warp transit accidents, demon incursions, navigational failures, or simple disappearance. The Adeptus Astartes had fared better. Their superior technology and faith provided better protection. But even Space Marines had suffered. Entire chapters had been lost when their fortress monasteries were consumed by warp rifts. Others were scattered, unable to regroup without communication or navigation. The Mechanicus reported catastrophic losses to Forge Worlds. The manufactorums that produced everything from ammunition to void shields were offline, captured, or destroyed. The Imperium's industrial capacity had dropped by an estimated 70%. The weapons and equipment needed to fight the expanding war simply weren't being produced fast enough. I compiled all this information into a comprehensive report, watching humanity's greatest empire disintegrate in real time. The Imperium had lasted 10,000 years. It was collapsing in months. On day 10 of my recovery, something changed. I felt it before anyone reported it, a shift in the warp, visible even through my bandaged third eye. Something vast and powerful was moving, and it was moving toward Gryphon. I contacted the bridge immediately. "Captain, we have incoming warp signatures. Multiple contacts. Something big." "Confirmed," Helios responded. "Augurs detect massive spatial distortions. Fleet is going to battle stations. Brother Captain Caduceus is preparing defensive formations. Through the ship's systems, I track the approaching signatures. 30 ships, moving in perfect formation. 2 organized to be random survivors. 2 coordinated to be merchant vessels fleeing danger. This was a military fleet with purpose and destination. They translated into real space 3 million kilometers from Gryphon, far enough to avoid immediate conflict, close enough to demonstrate strength. And when their identities became clear, hope and dread warred in my chest. Adeptus Mechanicus, a full explorator fleet from Forge World Mars itself, led by an Arc Mechanicus the size of a small moon. And they were broadcasting on all channels. "This is Archmagos Belisarius Karl of Mars, commanding the Tsar Quaesitor. We bring urgent intelligence regarding the Astronomican's failure and Terra's siege. All Imperial forces are ordered to attend immediate strategic briefing. The Omnissiah's knowledge shall light our path through darkness." Belisarius Call, one of the Mechanicus's most brilliant and controversial tech priests who'd served since before the Horus Heresy. If anyone understood the Astronomican's technical specifications well enough to diagnose its failure, it would be him. The briefing assembled every captain, navigator, and senior officer in the fleet aboard the Tsar Quaesitor. The Arc Mechanicus's interior was a cathedral of technology, vast machinery, humming reactors, data streams visible as hololithic rivers flowing through the air. It felt more alive than some planets I'd visited. Archmagos Call appeared as a towering figure of augmented flesh and mechanical enhancement. More machine than human, but possessing intelligence and purpose that transcended mere programming. His optical sensors swept across the assembled officers with calculating precision. "You wish to know what has occurred," he stated, without preamble. "The Astronomican has not failed permanently. It has been dimmed by catastrophic damage to the Golden Throne. The Emperor lives, but his throne is failing. We have perhaps 1 century before total collapse, perhaps less." The words hit like artillery shells. 1 century. A blink in Imperial terms, but within current crisis, it felt like eternity. "How do you know this?" Brother Captain Caduceus demanded. "Because I helped build portions of the Golden Throne's supporting systems 10,000 years ago. Because I've spent millennia studying its function and designing improvements that the High Lords refused to implement. And because 3 weeks ago, I received a direct summons from Rabaut Guilliman himself." Cal paused for effect. The Primarch has returned. Shocked silence. Then chaos. Everyone speaking at once, demanding clarification. A Primarch, returning after 10,000 years. Impossible. Incredible. Everything changing in an instant. Cal raised a mechanical limb for silence. "Lord Guilliman was held in stasis on Macragge, poisoned by the demon Primarch Fulgrim during the Heresy. The Inari, Eldari, who follow Ennead, the nascent god of death, possess technology to heal even such wounds. They awakened him. He now leads the Indomitus Crusade, fighting toward Terra to relieve the siege. "Where is the Primarch now?" Caduceus asked urgently. "Fighting through the Maelstrom region, accompanied by Eldari allies and the largest fleet assembled since the Great Crusade. His mission: reach Terra, stabilize the Golden Throne, restore the Astronomican. But the journey is perilous. The Great Rift cuts across his path. He requires assistance." Cowell gestured, and hololithic displays showed a strategic map of the galaxy. "Which is why I'm here. Lord Guilliman has authorized formation of relief forces to strike at the Great Rift from multiple angles, weakening it enough for his main fleet to push through." I studied the map. The Great Rift, Cicatrix Maledictum, was a massive warp storm cutting the galaxy nearly in half. It extended from the Eye of Terror across thousands of light years toward the galactic core. Cadia's fall had created it, and now it separated Terra from most of the Imperium. The throne world sat on one side, nearly everything else on the other. "You want us to attack a warp storm?" I asked incredulously. "Archmagos, I've been navigating through warp chaos for weeks. You can't fight storms. They're not enemies, they're environmental hazards." "Incorrect," Call responded. "The Great Rift is not a natural phenomenon. It's maintained by demonic will and chaos ritual. Disrupt those rituals, kill the greater demons maintaining key anchor points, and portions of the rift will collapse. Create a corridor for Lord Guilliman's passage." "How many anchor points?" Caduceus asked. 17 major sites along the rift's length. Each requires significant military force to assault. Fortified demon worlds, corrupted space hulks serving as ritual sites, warp fortresses maintained by chaos warbands. Attacking all 17 simultaneously divides our forces dangerously, but attacking sequentially gives the enemy time to reinforce. Call's optical sensors gleamed, which is why coordination is essential. 17 strike forces, launching coordinated assaults across thousands of light years, succeeding or failing together. The magnitude of the operation was staggering. 17 simultaneous assaults on fortified chaos positions, coordinated across impossible distances, without reliable communication or navigation. The logistics alone seemed impossible. "We can't coordinate across thousands of light years without the Astronomican," I said. "Even if we establish timing, we can't confirm all forces arrive simultaneously. The warp doesn't work that way." "Then we must make it work that way," Cowell replied. "I have brought Mechanicus technology, chronometric devices synchronized to atomic precision, capable of tracking time even through warp transit. Combined with navigator skill and precise timing, we can coordinate within acceptable parameters." "What are acceptable parameters?" I asked. "Plus or minus 3 days per 1,000 light years of separation. Given our target's distribution, all 17 forces should strike within 1 week of each other, close enough to prevent significant reinforcement. 1 week across thousands of light years. It was still insane, but it was also the only plan we had that might actually work, might restore the Astronomican, might save Terra and the Emperor. "What forces do we commit?" Caduceus asked. "The fleet at Griffon numbers 300 ships and portions of 15 Space Marine chapters. Significant, but not enough for 17 major assaults. Griffon provides 4 of the 17 strike forces. Other rally points across the Imperium provide the remainder. I've been coordinating with surviving Forge worlds, Space Marine fortress monasteries, and naval command structures still functional. The forces are assembling." Cowell displayed detailed fleet compositions. Total committed, approximately 1,500 ships, elements of 40 Space Marine chapters, 12 Titan legions, and 600,000 Imperial Guard from surviving regiments. It was massive by any normal standard, but spread across 17 objectives, facing entrenched demon forces on corrupted worlds. It was barely adequate. The casualty rate would be apocalyptic. "When do we launch?" Caduceus asked. "Coordinated departure in 48 hours. Transit time varies by destination. Shortest jump requires 2 weeks. longest 4 months. All forces must begin simultaneously to ensure synchronized arrival. Kor's mechanical limbs gestured with surprising grace. This will be the largest coordinated military operation since the Horus Heresy. Success means the Imperium survives. Failure means humanity's extinction. There is no middle ground. The meeting dissolved into frantic planning. Strike force compositions, target assignments, supply calculations. I listened with growing dread. My damaged third eye meant I couldn't navigate, which meant I was useless for the actual assault. But as I studied the mission parameters, an idea formed. Terrible idea, desperate idea. Idea that might actually matter. Archmagos call, I called out. I can't navigate with my damaged eye, but I can help coordinate. If we position specialized astropaths at each target site before the main assault, they could provide real-time communication once forces arrive. Limited range, but enough to confirm successful arrival and coordinate tactics. Cole's optical sensors focused on me. Explain. Standard astropathic communication requires the Astronomican as reference, but short-range communication within a single system can work without it. If we pre-position astropaths at target sites using smuggler routes or captured chaos vessels, they can serve as communication nodes once our forces arrive, turning 17 isolated assaults into one coordinated battle. Positioning astropaths at daemon-held worlds before assault is suicide mission, Caduceus objected. They'd be detected and killed immediately, not if they're hidden properly, inserted via stealth vessels, concealed in asteroid fields or abandoned stations. They only need to survive long enough to confirm fleet arrivals and coordinate initial strikes. I met his gaze. Yes, it's suicide, but it increases our success probability significantly. Isn't that worth dying for? Chapter 5. The Plague Heart. The journey to the Plague Heart's location took 3 weeks of careful warp navigation. Without my warp sight, I felt useless. A passenger on my own ship while Navigator Quintus did the real work. But Captain Helios kept me engaged with tactical planning, coordination with other Strike Force vessels, and preparing for what we'd face. The Plague Heart was a space hulk, a massive conglomeration of wrecked ships, asteroids, and space debris that had fused together over centuries. It drifted through warp space and real space unpredictably, a floating nightmare that could emerge anywhere. Currently, it orbited a dead world in the Pandorum system, serving as a ritual site for Nurgle cultists who used its corrupted innards to spread plague across nearby sectors. Intelligence suggested approximately 30,000 cultists inhabited the Hulk, along with demon forces and possibly a greater demon of Nurgle itself. Our mission: board the Plague Heart, fight to its central ritual chamber, destroy the greater demon maintaining the warp anchor, and collapse that section of the Great Rift. Simple objectives. Horrifying execution. We translated into the Pandorum system on schedule, plus or minus 2 days of optimal arrival, which counted as precision success given the circumstances. Auger scans immediately located the Plague Heart, a grotesque mass of corruption 15 kilometers long, oozing with warp taint and biological decay, visible even from orbit. Contact established with pre-positioned astropath, our communications officer reported. Astropath designation Whisper 9 confirms insertion success. Broadcasting coordination codes now. I felt relief. Whisper 9 had survived the insertion mission, hiding somewhere on the dead world below. Now she could coordinate our assault with the other strike forces hitting their targets simultaneously. 17 coordinated strikes across the galaxy. We just had to succeed at our piece. Brother Captain Caduceus's voice crackled over fleet communications. All strike forces. This is strategic command. 15 of 17 forces report successful arrival. Strike Force Delta encountered warp storm delay, expected in 6 days. Strike Force Omicron, no contact, presumed lost, a pause. We proceed without them. Execute assault protocols. The Emperor protects. 15 of 17, better than I dared hope. And 2,000 miles away, other forces were launching identical assaults. We weren't alone in this fight. The Ultramarines and Dark Angels led the boarding action. Thunderhawk gunships and drop pods streaked toward the Plague Heart, carrying 200 Space Marines and 3,000 Imperial Guard from Griffon's defense forces. Our naval vessels provided covering fire, lances, and macro cannons tearing into the Hulk's outer layers. The Plague Heart responded immediately. Corrupted defense turrets activated, spewing diseased ordnance. Plague-ridden fighters launched from hidden bays. Twisted aircraft, piloted by cultists, already dead, but too corrupted to realize it. And from within the Hulk itself, I felt something stir through the warp. Something vast. Something that noticed us. Navigator, we're detecting massive warp signatures inside the Hulk, the sensor officer reported. Multiple greater demon manifestations. This is worse than intelligence suggested. I consulted the tactical displays despite my blindness to the warp. How many greater demons? At least 3 confirmed, possibly more deeper inside. Captain, we're not equipped for this level of opposition. He was right. 3 greater demons meant 3 entities with the individual power to destroy entire companies of Space Marines. Our force was substantial, but not unlimited. We'd need perfect execution and considerable luck. Relay to Brother Captain Caduceus, Captain Helios ordered. Request assessment and tactical adjustment. Caduceus's response was immediate and characteristically blunt. We proceed. Greater demons are the point. Destroy them and the ritual collapses. This is what we came to do. All forces advance as planned. The Emperor protects. The boarding parties punched into the Plague Heart's outer hull, using melter charges and seismic hammers. I tracked their progress through helmet cam feeds, a descent into biological nightmare. The Hulk's interior was no longer metal and machinery. It was flesh. Walls pulsed with tumorous growths. Corridors dripped with infectious pus. The very air was toxic, requiring sealed armor and rebreather systems. "This is Sergeant Marius, 3rd Squad," a voice reported over Vox. "We've secured entry point Alpha, encountering light resistance, cultists armed with improvised weapons, proceeding to objective Secundus." Light resistance wouldn't last. The cultists were probing us, learning our strength. The real defenses would activate once we penetrated deeper. I was monitoring feeds when the first greater demon revealed itself. The Dark Angels had pushed 3 kilometers into the Hulk's interior, approaching what augurs identified as a major ritual chamber. Then reality tore open, and something emerged. The greater demon of Nurgle was massive, 10 meters tall, a mountain of diseased flesh and exposed organs. Its body wept with infections, each wound a breeding ground for supernatural plagues. It laughed as it manifested, a sound like drowning in sewage, and swung a massive cleaver that had been corroded down to a jagged edge. The Dark Angels opened fire immediately. Bolter rounds, plasma blasts, melter beams, all striking the demon's corrupt flesh. It staggered, but didn't fall. Instead, it charged, closing the distance with impossible speed for something so massive. What followed was butchery. The greater demon's cleaver swept through power-armored Space Marines like they were paper. Each blow killed or crippled. The Dark Angels fought with desperate courage, power weapons carving chunks from the demon's body. But for every wound inflicted, the creature seemed to grow stronger. It fed on their despair, their horror, their recognition of mortality. "All squads, focus fire on the greater demon," Brother Captain Valius of the Dark Angels commanded. "Melter weapons, maximum power, drive it back to the warp." But the greater demon wasn't alone. Lesser demons, plague-bearer manifestations with rotting flesh and rusted blades, emerged from the walls themselves. Dozens, then hundreds. The Dark Angels found themselves surrounded, fighting on all fronts. "This is Valius. We're taking heavy casualties, requesting immediate support." The sound of combat nearly drowned his words. "The demon is regenerating faster than we can damage it. We need sanctified weapons, maybe a librarian's psychic assault. Anything." "Negative," Caduceus responded from his own position. "Librarians are engaged with the second greater demon in Section 9. You must hold position and continue assault. Reinforcements in 10 minutes. 10 minutes might as well be 10 hours in that kind of combat. I watched through failing helmet cams as Dark Angels died. Warriors who'd fought for centuries, reduced to corpses by demonic disease and violence. The greater demon laughed throughout, praising Grandfather Nurgle with each kill. Then something changed. One of the Dark Angels, I couldn't identify him through the corrupted feed, charged the greater demon directly, not with weapons, with faith. I heard him screaming prayers to the Emperor, proclaiming the God Emperor's dominion over all reality, his conviction so absolute that it manifested as tangible force. The greater demon recoiled. Impossibly, the faith-charged Marine's power sword bit deeper than it should, cutting through demon flesh that had shrugged off melter-blasts. The wound smoked, burned with golden light that had no physical source. Faith. Pure, absolute faith could hurt them in ways weapons couldn't. Because faith was humanity's assertion of reality, and demons were unreality given form. All forces, I broadcast across every channel. The demons are vulnerable to faith, not just weapons, belief itself. Remember your training, your prayers, your conviction. You fight for the Emperor and all humanity. Let that truth be your weapon. I didn't know if it would help. Faith couldn't be commanded or manufactured. But perhaps reminding them would strengthen what was already there. The battle raged for 2 hours. Slowly, impossibly, the Imperial forces gained ground. The first greater demon fell after consuming 47 Dark Angels, brought down by accumulated damage, faith-empowered strikes, and sheer determination. Its death scream echoed through the warp, and I felt a portion of the Plague Heart's corruption weaken. The second greater demon died to the Ultramarines librarian, a psychic duel that killed the librarian but banished the demon back to the warp. The cost was terrible, but the ritual chamber it had been defending was now accessible. The third greater demon was worse. It had positioned itself at the Hulk's central chamber, the nexus where all ritual energies converged. Brother Captain Caedicius led the assault personally, 200 Ultramarines and the surviving Dark Angels converging on one location. I listened to the Vox traffic, trying to visualize a battle I couldn't see with warp sight. The descriptions were nightmarish. The central chamber was a cathedral of corruption, vaulted ceilings of infected flesh, pillars of fused bone, and at its heart, an altar where 30,000 cultists had died over decades to empower the rituals maintaining this section of the Great Rift. The third greater demon stood before that altar, and it was different from the others. Less physically massive, but more powerful. It radiated authority, command, the weight of Nurgle's favor. This wasn't just a demon. This was Nurgle's chosen champion for this site. This is Caedicius. We've engaged the primary target. It's stronger than anticipated. All available forces to the central chamber. We end this now, or we die trying. The Eternal Vigil and other naval vessels redoubled bombardment, trying to weaken the Hulk's structure, create distractions, anything to aid the ground forces. But we were fighting blind. Our weapons couldn't penetrate deep enough to directly assist. Through the Vox, I heard the battle's evolution. Space Marines chanting litanies while firing. The greater demon's voice, surprisingly articulate, mocking their faith, promising corruption's peace. The sound of power weapons meeting demon flesh, screaming, always screaming. Then Astropath Whisper Nine's voice cut through the Vox. All forces. This is coordination node. Strike forces, Alpha, Gamma, and Theta report successful primary objective completion. Warp anchors destroyed at 3 sites. The Great Rift is weakening. Repeat, we are succeeding. The news energized our forces. 3 down, 14 more to complete, but proof it was working. Proof this insane plan had a chance. In the central chamber, Brother Captain Caedicius made a decision. All Ultramarines, converging assault on my position. We breached the demon's defenses simultaneously. Maximum faith, maximum fury, for the Emperor and for Guilliman. The mention of Guilliman, their Primarch, returned after 10 millennia, sparked something in the Ultramarines. I heard it in their voices. felt it echo through the Vox. They weren't just fighting anymore. They were fighting for their spiritual father's mission, for his vision of the Imperium restored. The converging assault hit the greater demon from 6 directions simultaneously. 143 Space Marines, remnants of 2 chapters, channeling 10,000 years of accumulated faith and fury. The demon's defenses shattered under that onslaught, but it fought back with equal ferocity. I listened to warriors die, heroes whose names would be recorded in chapter records, whose sacrifices would be remembered for millennia. Each death bought inches of ground, seconds of advantage, tiny openings that others exploited. Brother Captain Caduceus reached the demon personally. Through his helmet cam, barely functional, corrupted by warp taint, I saw him drive his power sword into the demon's chest while reciting the Codex Astartes from memory. Not tactical doctrine, the spiritual teachings, the passages about duty, sacrifice, and humanity's eternal war against the darkness. The demon screamed, not pain, fury. Fury that these mortals dared resist, dared fight, dared wound something so far beyond their comprehension. It brought its plagued blade down toward Caduceus, a blow that would split him in half. A dark angel's terminator intervened, throwing himself between captain and demon, his armor taking the blow. The terminator died instantly, his sacrifice buying Caduceus the seconds needed to drive his sword deeper. Golden light erupted from the wound, not warp light, something else, something older, the Emperor's own power, channeled through 10,000 years of faith, manifesting through his champion's blade. The greater demon's scream changed pitch, from fury to genuine pain, then to terror, then to nothing as it dissolved, banished not just from real space, but injured even in the warp itself. A wound that would take centuries to heal, if it ever healed at all. The demon's death triggered a chain reaction. The altar collapsed. The ritual chamber's corruption began reversing. And in the warp, visible to me even through my damaged eye as a sudden brilliant flash, that section of the Great Rift wavered, weakened, began collapsing. "Target destroyed," Caduceus reported, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. "Ritual site eliminated. Warp anchor broken. We've succeeded. At..." He paused, checking casualty reports. "At terrible cost. 80% casualties among assault forces. But we've succeeded." Across the fleet, I heard similar reports arriving. Strike Force Beta. Mission complete. Primary target destroyed. Strike Force Epsilon. Mission complete. Greater Demon banished. Strike Force Zeta. Engaged, but proceeding. Expect completion within hours. 15 hours after the coordinated assault began, 12 of 15 active strike forces reported success. 2 were still engaged. 1 had gone silent, presumably destroyed, but their sacrifice had already damaged their target enough that follow-up forces could finish the job. 12 confirmed successes, 14 probable, 2 failures, 15 warp anchors destroyed or critically weakened. The Great Rift didn't collapse, something that vast couldn't be destroyed so quickly, but it had weakened significantly. Gaps appeared in its structure, navigable corridors through the warp storms, paths that Lord Guilliman's crusade fleet could exploit. We'd done it, at horrific cost, thousands dead, entire strike forces decimated, but we'd done it. "All forces, this is Archmagos Call, broadcasting from Fleet Command." The Mechanicus tech priest's voice cut through the Vox. "Mission parameters achieved. The Great Rift has been compromised. Lord Guilliman's fleet is exploiting the gaps, fighting toward Terra. Estimated arrival at Sol System, 6 weeks. The Imperium endures. 6 weeks. Guilliman would reach Terra in 6 weeks. Could relieve the siege. Could stabilize the Golden Throne. Could restore the Astronomican. If Terra still stood. If the Emperor still lived. If 6 weeks wasn't too late. But we'd bought humanity those 6 weeks. Bought them with blood, sacrifice, and faith that refused to die, even when hope seemed lost. The Eternal Vigil limped away from the Plagueheart's wreckage. We'd survived, though barely. Captain Helios ordered course for Griffon, repairs needed before we could contribute to further operations. Navigator Quintus began plotting the return journey, mapping warp currents that had changed even in the 3 weeks we'd been gone. I stood in the observation deck, my damaged third eye throbbing despite the bandages. Around me, the warp pressed against reality's boundaries, still hungry, still dangerous, but slightly less so. The Great Rift's weakening had eased pressure across this entire region. Was it worth it? Captain Helios asked, joining me. Ask me in 6 weeks, I said. If Guilliman reaches Terra, if the Astronomican is restored, if the Imperium survives, then maybe it was worth it. I paused, but the people who died today, the Dark Angels, the Ultramarines, the Guard soldiers, Astropath Whisper 9 who coordinated everything before her mind burned out, they won't see the result. They died so others could fight tomorrow. So yes, it was worth it. It had to be. You sound uncertain. I am uncertain. That's honesty. But I'm also determined. Uncertainty doesn't excuse inaction. I looked at him. Captain, whatever happens next, however this ends, we fought. We didn't surrender or despair. We hurt the enemy in ways they didn't expect. That matters. He nodded slowly. Then we continue fighting. One battle at a time. One day at a time. One day at a time, I agreed. The Eternal Vigil entered warp space, heading home. Behind us, the Plague Heart drifted as a lifeless hulk, its corruption purged, its demons banished, its threat eliminated. One victory among thousands of ongoing battles. But victories added up. Enough small wins created large success. Enough determined resistance broke even overwhelming assault. The Imperium would survive this. Changed, diminished, scarred, but alive. Because humanity's strength wasn't our technology, or our numbers, or even our faith. It was our refusal to die quietly. Chapter 6. The vigil restored, 6 weeks became 7. 7 became 8. 8 became 10. The Eternal Vigil remained at Griffon, undergoing extensive repairs while I recovered from my third eye's damage. The Medici gradually unwrapped the bandages, testing my warp sight in careful increments. The eye had healed mostly. I could see the warp again, though my vision was dimmer than before, requiring more concentration to perceive details. You'll never regain full capability, the Medicae told me honestly. The damage was too severe, but 70% functionality is survivable. Many navigators operate at less, 70%. A permanent disability, but I'd accept it. Better than blindness, better than death. And honestly, after everything I'd witnessed, part of me was grateful for reduced warp sight. The Imperium was less overwhelming when viewed through damaged eyes. Intelligence reports continued flowing into Griffon from across the Imperium. The news was mixed. Victories and defeats, hopes raised and crushed. The Imperium struggling to survive day by day. Lord Guilliman's Crusade fleet had indeed exploited the weakened Great Rift, fighting through to the Sol system. The battle for Terra raged for 3 weeks. Space Marines, Custodes, Sisters of Battle, and Imperial Guard defending against chaos forces that numbered in the billions. The fight was apocalyptic. Entire hive sectors destroyed, millions dead, but Terra held. The Emperor still lived. The Golden Throne still functioned, barely. And on the 34th day after our assault on the Plague Heart, everything changed. I was in the Navigator's spire, conducting routine warp observations when I felt it. A pulse in the Imperium. Not hostile, not like the demon presences I'd learned to recognize. This was different. Organized, powerful, familiar, then light. The Astronomican blazed back into existence, like a sun emerging from eclipse. Not gradually, instantly. One moment darkness. The next, that glorious golden illumination I'd thought lost forever. The Emperor's light, restored, shining across the galaxy with impossible brilliance. I gasped, my damaged third eye flooding with sensation I'd forgotten. The warp was still chaotic, still dangerous, but now it had structure again. Orientation, safety. The Astronomican's return was like having a lighthouse appear in a storm-tossed ocean. Suddenly, navigation was possible again. Journeys calculable, hope tangible. Captain, I shouted into the Vox. The Astronomican, it's back! Terra succeeded. Across Griffon's system, across the entire fleet, The news spread like wildfire. Ships sounded horns. Crew members wept openly. Prayer services erupted spontaneously as millions gave thanks to the God Emperor for his return. But even as relief flooded through me, I noticed something. The Astronomican was different now. The light wasn't quite the same golden hue. It carried undertones of blue, of shimmering psychic power that felt newer, fresher, as if the beacon had been rebuilt rather than repaired. Over the next hours, official transmissions began arriving from Terra. Not the fragmentary, desperate messages we'd received before. Clear, strong astropathic broadcasts, coordinated by fully functional choir stations. This is the Adeptus Administratum broadcasting from Terra to all Imperial forces. The siege of Holy Terra has been broken. Lord Commander Robert Guilliman has stabilized the Golden Throne through sacred technologies recovered during the Indomitus Crusade. The Astronomican is restored and will remain functional. All forces are ordered to re-establish contact with Sector Command, report status, and await further orders. The Emperor protects, now and forever. More details emerged over subsequent broadcasts. Guilliman had brought technology from his crusade, devices created by Archmagos Call, ancient designs recovered from the dark age of technology, and even some Eldari contributions. Together, they'd reinforced the Golden Throne's failing systems, ensuring it could function for millennia more. The Emperor still sat upon his throne, still sacrificed his existence to protect humanity. But now that sacrifice had meaning beyond mere survival. It was the foundation for rebuilding. Captain Helios convened the senior staff to discuss implications. The Astronomican is restored. Navigation is possible again. But the galaxy has fundamentally changed during these months of darkness. We need to assess where we stand. Tech Priest Dominius provided statistical analysis. Imperial Navy losses estimated at 73%. Merchant fleet losses at 89%. Forge world production capacity reduced by 62%. Hive world population decreased by an estimated 30 billion through warfare, starvation, and demonic incursion. The Imperium's infrastructure is severely compromised. Commander Voss added military assessment. Space Marine chapters suffered approximately 30% casualties, with 12 chapters declared extinct. Imperial Guard losses are catastrophic. Entire armies disappeared during the warp transit chaos. The Militarum is effectively rebuilding from scratch in most sectors. The numbers were devastating. The Imperium had survived, but barely. It would take decades to recover what had been lost in mere months. What about the Great Rift? I asked. Did our assault have lasting effect? Partially, Helios replied. The rift still exists, a permanent warp storm cutting the galaxy in half. But it's navigable now, thanks to the weaknesses we created and Lord Guilliman's exploitation of them. Travel is dangerous, casualty rates high, but possible. The galaxy isn't completely severed. The Great Rift had become a permanent feature, a scar across reality that would persist for thousands of years. But humanity had learned to survive it, navigate it, even fight through it when necessary. So what happens now? Master-at-Arms Kragan asked. We've survived the worst. What's our mission? Helios pulled up a strategic display showing the Imperium's current status. Lord Guilliman is reorganizing Imperial military doctrine. The Indomitus Crusade will continue. Thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, pushing out from Terra to reclaim lost worlds and stabilize threatened sectors. We've been assigned to the Nemesis Sector Stabilization Fleet. Our mission: visit isolated worlds, re-establish Imperial authority, provide aid where possible, eliminate threats where necessary. It sounded simple. It would be anything but. Isolated worlds had spent months without Imperial contact, without support, without hope. Some would welcome our return. Others would have adapted, established independent governments, made deals with Xenos, fallen to chaos. Not every world could be saved. Not every population would want saving. We depart in 2 weeks, Helios continued. Navigator Nostromo, you'll lead navigation using the restored Astronomican. Your 70% capability is adequate for most operations, and you have more experience with unstable warp conditions than any navigator in the fleet. I nodded acceptance. 2 weeks to prepare for missions that might last years. 2 weeks to adjust to warp navigation with the Astronomican restored. But the galaxy fundamentally changed. During those 2 weeks, I compiled my final report on warp navigation without the beacon. Everything I'd learned, every technique developed, every hard-won insight. The knowledge was preserved in the Navis Nobilite archives, shared with every navigator house across the Imperium, because it might happen again. The Astronomican might fail again, and humanity needed to know how to survive. I also corresponded with the surviving navigators from our initial council. Navigator Quintus had died during the assault on his assigned target, killed by demon corruption despite his centuries of experience. Navigator Soraya survived and was assigned to Lord Guilliman's personal fleet. Navigator Mordant had disappeared, his ship lost somewhere in the Great Rift, fate unknown. Of the 15 navigators who'd met aboard the Righteous Flame, only 7 survived. The casualty rate mirrored humanity's losses across all categories. Catastrophic but not total. Enough remained to rebuild. On the departure day, Captain Helios gathered the crew in the main assembly hall. The Eternal Vigil's complement had been reduced from 15,000 to 11,000 during our trials. Casualties from warp exposure, combat losses, and simple attrition. But the survivors were hardened, experienced, forged by crisis into something stronger than before. "We've survived the impossible," Helios began. "Months ago, the Astronomican failed. Experts said we'd all die, that the Imperium would fragment and disappear. They were almost right. We lost billions, suffered catastrophic damage, watched the galaxy tear itself apart. But we survived. Not because we're lucky, not because the Emperor intervened directly. We survived because we refused to quit, because duty mattered more than odds, because humanity's strength isn't our technology or numbers, it's our determination." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Now we face a new mission, rebuilding the Imperium, finding lost worlds, helping the desperate and destroying the corrupt. It won't be glorious. Most days will be difficult, confusing work with no clear victories. But it matters. Every world we reconnect, every citizen we save, every threat we eliminate, it rebuilds what was lost, and that's worth doing." The crew responded with subdued determination. No cheering, no grand declarations, just quiet acceptance of duty. They'd learned that survival was its own reward. The Eternal Vigil departed Griffon surrounded by 30 other vessels, the Nemesis Sector Stabilization Fleet. We entered warp space using the Astronomican as our guide, and I felt the difference immediately. Navigation was possible again. Difficult, but possible. The golden light showed the way. Our first destination was Tertius Prime, an industrial world that hadn't communicated in 3 months. Intelligence suspected either total loss or desperate survival. We'd find out which. The journey took 2 weeks, longer than it would have before the rift, but manageable. When we translated into the Tertius system, I expected to find devastation. Instead, we found survival. Tertius Prime was damaged but functional. The population had dropped from 3 billion to 2 billion. Catastrophic losses, but not extinction. They'd fought off 3 separate demonic incursions using nothing but faith, improvised weapons, and desperate courage. When our fleet arrived, they greeted us not with relief, but with pride. "We held," the planetary governor told Captain Helios during negotiations. "The light went out, demons came, and we held. Because we're Imperial citizens, because the Emperor protects, and because surrender isn't in our vocabulary." That phrase, "we held," became common across the Nemesis sector, world after world reporting similar stories. Terrible losses, desperate battles, but survival. Humanity had faced extinction and refused it. Not every world succeeded. We found Mordian Secundus depopulated. All 700 million citizens dead or disappeared. Found Graxos corrupted beyond saving. The entire population turned to chaos, requiring exterminatus. Found dozens of worlds so damaged they'd require decades to recover. But we also found triumph. Worlds that had suffered but survived. People who'd faced impossible odds and endured. The Imperium fragmenting but not breaking. Humanity beaten but not destroyed. Over the following year, the Eternal Vigil visited 43 worlds in the Nemesis sector. 31 were successfully reconnected to Imperial authority. 8 required military intervention to eliminate threats. 4 were beyond saving. It was slow, grinding work. Nothing like the dramatic battles at the Plague Heart or the desperate flight to Griffon. Just day after day of difficult decisions, moral compromises, and incremental progress. But incremental progress added up. By the mission's first anniversary, the Nemesis sector had been stabilized, trade routes re-established, defense fleets organized, communication networks rebuilt. It would take decades to fully recover, but the foundation was laid. Captain Helios was promoted to Commodore, given command of an entire battle group. Commander Voss received his own ship. Master-at-Arms Kragan joined the Officio Prefectus as a commissar. The Eternal Vigil's crew scattered across the Imperium, taking their experience to new assignments. I remained a navigator, my damaged third eye limiting my assignments to safer routes. But I didn't mind. I'd seen enough terror for a lifetime. Guiding merchant convoys through established warp lanes was honest work, and honesty had value. Sometimes, during long transits, I thought about the months when the Astronomican failed, remembered the darkness, the fear, the desperate struggle, remembered the people who died so others could live, and I wondered if it would happen again. If the Golden Throne would fail despite Guilliman's repairs, if humanity would face another crisis that threatened extinction. Probably. The galaxy was unforgiving, and humanity's enemies were legion. Another catastrophe was inevitable, just a question of when, not if. But I also remembered something else. Humanity survived. Not because we were stronger than our enemies, not because the Emperor protected us from all harm. We survived because when darkness came, we fought. When hope seemed lost, we persevered. When extinction beckoned, we refused. That refusal was humanity's true strength. The stubborn, irrational determination to survive one more day, to fight one more battle, to believe one more time that tomorrow might be better than today. The Astronomican could fail. Terror could fall. The Imperium could shatter into a million pieces. But humanity would endure, because that's what we do. We endure. Chapter. The Eternal Vigil 10 years after the Astronomican's failure, I stood once again in the Navigator's spire of the Eternal Vigil. Captain Helios, now Admiral Helios, commanding an entire battle fleet, had requested me specifically for his flagship. The old ship had been rebuilt, upgraded, turned into something greater than before, but her name remained unchanged, a reminder of what we'd endured. We were preparing for a mission into the Great Rift itself. The massive warp storm that cut the galaxy in half had become a permanent feature, but it needed constant monitoring. Warp phenomena shifted within it constantly, and the Vigil Eternal maintained observation posts at key locations to track changes and warn of emerging threats. Navigator Nostromo reporting for duty, I said, entering the bridge. Admiral Helios looked older. The stress of command had aged him considerably, but his eyes still carried the determination I remembered from our first desperate journey. Alexia, good to have you back. We've got a difficult mission ahead. He briefed me on the objective: deep penetration reconnaissance into the Rift's heart, investigating reports of a new warp storm forming. If confirmed, it could threaten dozens of systems. Our mission was to verify, assess, and if possible, disrupt the storm's formation before it stabilized. How long will we be in the Rift? I asked. 2 weeks minimum, possibly 4 if complications arise. You'll be navigating through some of the worst warp space in the galaxy. Can your damaged eye handle it? It'll have to, I said simply. Besides, I've navigated worse. Remember that 3-week blind journey? At least now I can see, he smiled grimly. True, we've both survived worse. Doesn't make this mission less dangerous, but it provides perspective. Over the next day, we assembled the mission fleet, 12 ships total, the Eternal Vigil as flagship, 6 escort vessels, 3 transport ships carrying supplies and relief materials for any beleaguered worlds we encountered, and 2 specialized research vessels from the Adeptus Mechanicus. Each ship carried experienced crew who'd survived the original crisis and knew how to operate in extreme conditions. We departed Luna on the 5th anniversary of the Astronomican's restoration, a deliberate choice by Admiral Helios. Reminder of what we're protecting, he explained. 10 years ago, we thought the Imperium would fall. It didn't. Let's make sure it stays standing. The journey to the Great Rift took 3 weeks of standard warp travel. The Astronomican guided us faithfully, though I noticed its light flickered more in some regions, the warp's natural chaos creating interference. Navigators had learned to compensate, but it was another reminder that nothing was truly permanent or guaranteed. We crossed into the Great Rift at a mapped stable point, one of the corridors created by our assault 10 years earlier. Immediately, conditions deteriorated. The warp became chaotic, currents shifting unpredictably. The Astronomican's light dimmed by interference, but it was navigable, difficult, requiring constant attention, but possible. We'd learned so much in 10 years about operating in extreme warp conditions that what would have been impossible before was now merely dangerous. First waypoint in 6 hours, I reported. Warp currents are unstable but predictable. Maintaining course. The waypoints were monitoring stations. Fortified structures existing half in real space, half in the warp, staffed by brave souls who watched the rift's interior and reported changes. We needed to check each station, verify their functionality, and gather data about warp conditions. The first station, Vigil Point Alpha, was intact but embattled. A demon incursion had attempted to overwhelm it 3 days prior, and the garrison was still recovering. We held them, the station commander reported. Barely. Lost 40% of our personnel, but the daemons are banished. Station remains operational. Admiral Helios authorized medical support and reinforcements. You're heroes, Commander. The data you gather saves lives across the Imperium. Your sacrifice matters. We spent 4 hours at Vigil Point Alpha, assisting with repairs and gathering intelligence, then moved deeper into the rift, toward the heart where the new storm was supposedly forming. At Vigil Point Delta, we found horror. The station was intact structurally, but everyone aboard was dead. Not killed violently, they'd simply died simultaneously. Their bodies unmarked but lifeless. Void exposure hadn't killed them. Corruption hadn't claimed them. They just stopped. Psychic attack, I concluded after examining the scene with my warp sight. Something killed their souls, left their bodies intact, precise, deliberate, and powerful enough to affect an entire station simultaneously. What could do that? Admiral Helios asked. A greater demon, a powerful psyker serving chaos, or, I hesitated, or something worse. Something we haven't encountered before. We couldn't stay to investigate further. The mission timeline was critical, but we documented everything, hoping intelligence analysts could determine what had happened and how to prevent it. Deeper into the rift. Past Vigil Point Epsilon, where the garrison reported increased diamond activity but remained functional. Past Vigil Point Zeta, which had gone silent, we found only wreckage, the station torn apart by forces unknown. Finally, 1 week into our journey, we reached the coordinates where the new storm was reportedly forming. What we found defied expectation. The storm wasn't forming naturally. It was being created, built deliberately by a massive ritual spanning multiple reality layers. Through my warp sight, I perceived the architecture. Thousands of cultists on dozens of planets, coordinating their sacrifices, channeling power toward a specific point in the warp, creating a new permanent storm that would cut additional Imperial sectors off from support. It's artificial, I reported to Admiral Helios. Someone is building this storm deliberately, and based on the scale, this is Chaos Legion work. Possibly multiple legions coordinating. Can we disrupt it? Maybe, if we strike the ritual sites simultaneously, like we did with the Great Rift Anchors. But we'd need more forces. This fleet isn't sufficient for that scale of operation. Admiral Helios considered options. We can't call for reinforcements. Communication in the rift is too unreliable. But we can't let this storm complete either. If it stabilizes, it threatens 17 systems containing 40 billion people. I studied the tactical display, analyzing the ritual's structure. There's a central coordination point. The ritual sites are distributed, but they're all channeling power toward one location. That dead world, Atropos Secundus. If we destroy whatever's coordinating from there, the entire ritual collapses. One target instead of dozens. That we can handle. Helios pulled up the fleet roster. We hit Atropos Secundus with everything we have. Fast strike, maximum destruction, extract before they respond in force. The attack plan came together quickly. The Eternal Vigil and our escort vessels would translate into Atropos Secundus system. Conduct orbital bombardment of the ritual site. Then deploy ground forces to destroy whatever physical anchors maintained the coordination. Speed was essential. Once the enemy realized we were there, they'd send reinforcements. We translated into the Atropos system expecting resistance. Found worse. The ritual site was a city of the dead, a necropolis built from bones of billions, structures grown from corpses fused together through warp sorcery. At its center stood a cathedral that pulsed with unnatural light, and I could see through warp sight what coordinated everything. A demon prince. Not a greater demon serving one of the chaos gods, but an ascended mortal who'd gained divinity through corruption. It sat upon a throne of skulls, channeling power from ritual sites across the rift, weaving them into a storm that would last millennia. And it knew we were there. Mortals. Its voice boomed across every Vox channel. bypassing our security. You dare interrupt the great work? Your deaths will fuel the storm's completion. All ships, engage, Admiral Helios ordered. Lance batteries, maximum power. Destroy that cathedral. Our weapons fired. Concentrated energy beams that could crack continents. They struck the cathedral and splashed. Warp shields protected it. Power channeled from the ritual sites across the rift. We weren't just fighting one enemy. We were fighting the collective might of thousands of corrupted worlds. Shields are impenetrable from orbit, our sensor officer reported. We'd need weeks of sustained bombardment to break through. We don't have weeks, I said, an idea forming. But I have another option. If I can disrupt the ritual's coordination at its source, psychically, directly, the shields will fail. That means entering the warp itself, Admiral Helios said quietly, projecting your consciousness into the Imperium while that demon prince is actively watching. It will kill you, Alexia. Probably, I agreed. But if I don't try, we fail the mission. The storm completes. 40 billion people die. So I try, he wanted to argue. I saw it in his eyes. But we'd both learned 10 years ago that sometimes survival required sacrifice. Sometimes duty demanded more than you wanted to give. Do it, he said. We'll buy you time however we can. I returned to the Navigator's spire and prepared for something. I'd never attempted full immersion into the warp while maintaining enough consciousness to act deliberately. It was incredibly dangerous. Most navigators who tried it died or went mad. But I had one advantage. I'd stared into the warp for 3 weeks without the Astronomican's protection. I knew its depths better than most. The experience defied description. I was simultaneously in the Navigator's spire and in an infinite space of pure thought and emotion. The Demon Prince's presence was immediate, a towering figure of corruption and power that fixed its attention on my psychic form. Navigator, it hissed. You offer yourself to me, foolish. Your soul will burn eternal in my service. I'm not offering anything, I replied, my voice somehow carrying across psychic space. I'm here to break your ritual. I reached out with my will toward the coordination streams, the psychic connections linking the Demon Prince to ritual sites across the rift. They were strong, reinforced by millennia of chaos sorcery, but they were also complex, interdependent, vulnerable to disruption if you knew where to strike. The Demon Prince laughed and attacked. Psychic energy slammed into my consciousness like physical blows, pain beyond agony. My mind fragmenting under assault. I felt myself dying, my sense of self dissolving into the warp's chaos. But I'd died before in a way, had my identity stripped away and rebuilt during the Astronomican's failure, had stared into oblivion and climbed back. This was just one more death to survive. I grabbed one of the coordination streams and pulled. The psychic connection between Demon Prince and a ritual site snapped like overstressed cable. Power feedback screamed through the network. Other connections destabilized. The Demon Prince roared. Genuine pain now, not mockery. It redoubled its assault, trying to destroy my consciousness before I could damage the ritual further. I pulled another stream, snapped it, pulled a third, a fourth. The ritual network was collapsing. Without coordination, the distributed sites were just isolated chaos cults, unable to combine their power into something greater. The storm's formation halted, then began reversing. No! The Demon Prince's scream echoed across dimensions. Millennia of work! You cannot... I pulled the final stream, the one connecting directly to the Demon Prince's throne. The feedback was catastrophic. Power meant to create a warp storm instead turned inward, consuming its source. The Demon Prince burned, not killed. Demons couldn't truly die, but banished. His mortal form destroyed. His consciousness scattered across the warp for centuries before it could reform. In real space, the cathedral exploded. Warp shields collapsed. The city of the dead began dissolving as the sorcery maintaining it failed. And I fell back into my own body, bleeding from every orifice. My third eye nearly burned out completely, but alive. Barely, but alive. The ritual is broken, I reported through bloodied lips. The storm won't form. Mission, success. Then I passed out. Consciousness fleeing to somewhere dark and safe, where demon princes couldn't follow. I woke 3 weeks later on Luna, in the Vigil Eternal's medical facilities. My third eye was bandaged again, permanent damage this time, reduced to perhaps 30% functionality. I'd never navigate difficult warp routes again, but the mission had succeeded. The storm hadn't formed. 40 billion people lived who would have died. The Great Rift remained dangerous, but not impassably so. Admiral Helios visited my recovery bed. You did it. Broke the ritual, banished the demon prince, saved the mission. Lord Commander Guilliman himself commended your actions. At what cost? I asked, gesturing to my bandaged eye. I'm useless as a navigator now. 30% functionality isn't enough for anything except training and analysis. Then you'll train and analyze. Share your knowledge with the next generation. Teach them how to survive the impossible. He smiled. Alexia, you've fought for 10 years. You've earned rest. Take it. He was right. I'd fought enough, done enough, sacrificed enough. Time to let others carry the burden while I taught them how. The Vigil Eternal welcomed me as a permanent instructor. I spent my remaining years training young navigators, teaching them techniques I'd learned through desperate necessity, preparing them for crises that might never come or might arrive tomorrow. I told them about the 3 weeks navigating blind, about the assault on the Plague Heart, about staring into a demon prince's consciousness and refusing to blink. Not to glorify myself, but to teach them the fundamental truth. Humanity survives not through superiority, but through stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The Astronomican could fail again, would fail again eventually, nothing lasts forever. But when that darkness came, humanity would endure it, would navigate blind if necessary, would fight impossible battles because not fighting meant certain death. We were the Vigil Eternal, watchers in the darkness, students of catastrophe, defenders against the unthinkable, and we would never, ever stop fighting, because that's what humanity does. Epilogue. 50 years after the Astronomican's failure, Navigator Alexia Nostromo died peacefully in her sleep on Luna, surrounded by students she'd trained and colleagues she'd served beside. Her third eye had been completely blind for the last decade, the accumulated damage finally rendering it useless. But she'd continued teaching, using memory and wisdom rather than sight. Her funeral was attended by hundreds. Navigators she'd trained, crew members she'd saved, admirals she'd served. Lord Commander Guilliman himself sent a personal message honoring her sacrifice and contribution. But the greatest memorial was invisible. Every navigator trained in emergency procedures learned from her documentation. Every response protocol for catastrophic warp phenomena incorporated her insights. Every contingency plan for Astronomican failure was built on foundations she'd laid. She'd navigated blind through the warp when humanity needed it most. Then she'd ensured humanity would never be as blind again. The Astronomican still shines, golden light guiding humanity across the galaxy. But now we know we can survive without it. Know we can endure the darkness, because Navigator Alexia Nostromo showed us how. And that knowledge is itself a light.